transit agency is in dire shape at a time when transit is key to the economic comeback. So I'm trying to figure out if what happened today is reform or just a lot of talk. Denver's top cops go before city council to explain their actions in the streets. They were met with jeers. A resident of Stapleton, who you know from this program, reflects on the name change that started today. Anonymously attacking outsiders is not how you Colorado, but we are seeing it happen in a mountain town. I'll have our Word of Thanks group project for the week, ready to change our community if you have $5 laying around. And only in Colorado do people protest by exercising. That's next. Face it, RTD was a few passengers short of a busload before the pandemic, and now, with the economy, they are in a financial death spiral that threatens the transit system that our region needs to keep moving. So in steps the state today, with the governor announcing a shiny new accountability committee to review RTD top to bottom. Steve Stager's our man on transit. And Steve, the state could have tried to take control of RTD. Instead, we have a committee to make suggestions.
Yes, suggestions, Kyle. This will be an advisory committee, but the governor and the two Democrats who are putting it all together say you will see some change. More on that in just a minute. But first, a look at the problems that are currently getting worse by the day for RTD. Last night, RTD staff told its elected board of directors that because of COVID, the agency is expecting a $252 million hole in its budget next year. Without many solutions to fill that hole, RTD temporarily cut its service by about 40% because of a decline in ridership during the pandemic. Now, staff says the agency may not be able to bring that service back because of the budget. The Accountability Committee announced this afternoon will spend the next year taking a critical look at how RTD spends money, its leadership structure, and the services it offers. By next summer, they will deliver a list of recommendations for RTD's board to consider. Just recommendations, mind you. Our question is, do recommendations without power actually have teeth?
It's important to get governance right. And this commission will take a serious look at national governance models of what works and what doesn't work.
And if RTD chooses not to take a recommendation, they actually have to put that in writing and publicly stand by that. So we aren't forcing RTD's hand on anything, but we are making all the recommendations incredibly public. And if they choose not to take a recommendation, that's going to be incredibly public as well. And ultimately, they are an elected board, and public pressure does mean something.
So what about that train to Longmont? You know, the governor opened the news conference today talking about his own personal disappointment that that thing hasn't shown up yet. So I asked him, with all of these budget problems, should people just be prepared that that train will never come? He told me it has to happen. It was promised to the taxpayers when they voted for it back in 2004, and that the only way out of it, Kyle, would be for those same taxpayers and voters to go back to the polls and say, it's okay, you can not do it.
Has to happen, or get a permission slip from the voters to say, it's not going to happen, let's move on to something else, even though we've already paid for it.
Absolutely. And an interesting point on that, too. So if you look at the fast tracks money, the sales tax revenue that we pay each time we buy something into fast tracks, and you look at RTD's budget for next year with that funding, about 90% of the money that they expect to make from fast tracks will go to service debt on the projects already involved in fast tracks. This has been a problem since the start. It's a problem that's going to move forward as well.
Yeah, so what are you doing with your fast tracks money? Oh, we're using it to pay for building fast tracks. All right, got it, Steve. Thank you. We are getting some related feedback tonight on our RTD coverage from a viewer named Lori, who writes to us to say that she's back in Colorado for the summer. Lori said she'd been gone for a while and wondered whatever happened to our somewhat frequent updates on how many days remaining until RTD's long-delayed train to Longmont. So here's the deal, Lori. I used to have that big homemade graphic thing that I would hold up with the countdown, but the graphic is really, it's too awkward for the home studio. I would have to build a fold-up easel that I could use to demonstrate to you that it is 10,791 days until RTD thinks that it can get that train to Longmont in the year 2050. A federal judge is telling Denver police and activists that they need to keep talking in order to come up with an agreement on when and how police will use tear gas and other force against protesters. The judge's temporary restraining order telling DPD not to use force against peaceful protesters, that runs out on Friday. And the judge just ruled that both sides need to come to an agreement. Or if they can't do that, each side can turn in their own plan of how it should work, and the judge will choose the one that's more reasonable. Denver's police chief and his boss, the manager of safety, went before city council today for the first time since the protests and the officers' use of force in our streets. City council members talked about broken trust with the community. Public Safety Manager Murphy Robinson acknowledged that some officers' actions were disappointing to him, but then he blamed the protesters.
The cases that are egregious, the cases that are not of our policy, I hear you. I'm upset about it. Matter of fact, I'm furious about it because it paints a picture of our police department and of the men and women that serve us that is not completely accurate of the entire body. Maybe everything we as the city and county of Denver didn't do everything to the best of our ability to make sure that those policies were implemented correctly. We heard the stories. I honor those stories. However, I will tell you that there was a lot of violence. There was a ton of violence during those days. And I will tell you that we have to consider that. We have to consider that as we move forward.
Robinson said that he personally had been hit with rocks, and he said that the whole reason that Denver officers put on their riot gear is because an officer was hit by a bottle. That claim also drew jeers from the crowd at the council meeting. Church bells rang at noon across Denver, and they kept ringing today for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Park Hill United Methodist does not have church bells inside, so they rang handbells outside as people passed, beeped, and cheered. The bells will ring at noon tomorrow and again on Friday. Today it was for the victims of the Emmanuel AME church shooting in Charleston, South Carolina 5 years ago. Tomorrow they ring for George Floyd. At the time, each day a reminder of how long a police officer knelt on Floyd's neck as he died. And on Friday, the bells ring for Juneteenth. The Stapleton Master Community Association today surrendered that neighborhood's KKK-linked name in a unanimous vote that they will move on and find a new one. New name to be approved by the developer. Our Chris Vanderveen, resident of that neighborhood, asked to offer these thoughts.
It was Martin Luther King who suggested the arc of the moral universe, while long, bends toward justice. Justice. In it, we find reason for hope that despite trial and tribulation, time makes us better. Time. It wasn't that long ago when a city named an airport after a man who once told the KKK, "If I'm reelected, I shall give the Klan the kind of administration it wants." Perhaps it was a moment of weakness, civility to hatred in exchange for votes. Perhaps it was who he was. Either way, time has not treated those remarks kindly. As the name Stapleton vanishes from a neighborhood I have called home for a decade, I must remember the arc of the moral universe as it bends. Decisions we make today will undergo the scrutiny of those not yet alive to see them. We will be judged by a jury we will never know. And it is there where I issue this challenge. As the arc bends, what side of it do you want to be on? If they made a statue of you, if they named a neighborhood after you, would your life remain worthy of praise long after you lived it? Or would those who look back see moments of weakness, moments of political expediency? In other words, what side of history do you want to be on? Statues in neighborhoods and airports are not here to commemorate our mistakes. No, they are here to honor those who looked at the arc and said, I want to go where it's going, where it's bending, where it inevitably will end, closer every day to justice. For you, for me, and for every single one of us fortunate enough to hear the words of a man whose name still very much belongs in a neighborhood I call home.
Our new segment, Word of Thanks, been around for 2 weeks now, and I want you to take a look at what you've accomplished. Next viewers raised $90,000 to fund the cleanup of Civic Center Park, $54,000 the next week to mentor young black men in our community. All right, you ready to see what we can do this week? A word of thanks. The word that comes to mind when I think of the Center on Colfax is celebrate. They will celebrate Pride virtually this weekend. The Center on Colfax is the center of the LGBTQ community in Denver. No Pride Parade this year means that they lose out on their largest source of funding. The Center on Colfax has one particular program that I would like to talk to you about. Sage of the Rockies is a welcoming place for older people in the LGBTQ community and their friends. People who are twice as likely to be single and living alone, 4 times less likely to have children to connect with for support. These are folks who have persevered through a lifetime of discrimination and prejudice. I was thinking earlier this week with the Supreme Court ruling banning LGBTQ job discrimination, that there are so many people in our community and around America who went through most or all of their working lives fearing what might happen if their boss or their coworkers found out who they were or who they loved. So I'm asking you tonight to join me in recognizing them, in celebrating them, by supporting the SAGE program at the Center on Colfax. I know it's annoying when somebody on TV asks you to give your money, so you know the deal. If you're in for $5 and you're in for $5 and you're good for $5, I will match the first 50 next viewer's contributions. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 and we will send you a link to donate. Or you can find it on Next social media pages or in the Next section on 9news.com. I ask you to help us send a clear message for Pride this year, that we see and that we admire the elders of our LGBTQ community.
If I was visiting somewhere and I got that on my car, I'm not sure that's a place that I would go back to.
Estes Park is welcoming tourists again, but someone in town is intent on driving them away. And dog parks in Denver are still closed as so much else opens. Really? Is your Labradoodle a COVID-19 risk? The man in charge of Denver's dog parks has something he'd like us all to hear. Next. So as more and more of Denver reopens, Next viewers have been wondering, why are dog parks still closed? Let's bring in Denver Parks and Rec Director Scott Gilmore to discuss. Come on, Scott.
You know, we have a very large park system. We are not a city that has, 1 or 2 dog parks and 1 or 2 parks. We have 270 parks in our city. We have 170 playgrounds. We have 260 basketball, tennis courts, pickleball courts, and over the past 3 weeks, we have been opening all those amenities.
What day are we opening the dog park, Scott?
We're going to open them Friday morning, 5 a.m. when the park's open, so all of them will be open.
So Friday morning, Denver's dog parks are open for all the dogs.
For all the dogs.
The big dogs.
Big dogs.
The little dogs.
Small dogs.
The good dogs.
Good dogs, no bad dogs.
There are no bad dogs, Scott. There are no bad dogs.
All
hey,
right.
Listen, thank you for your time. Thanks for everything that you guys have done. I hope you know now how much people love and enjoy Denver's park system, because now we've had some time away from it. You know what I'm saying?
I've been doing this 8 years, and I'll tell you what, I know how much they love the park system. Enjoy and just be safe out there and be smart, please.
All right, very good. Hey, thanks for your time, Scott. You have a great day.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate it.
They thought they were speaking for their neighbors. They were wrong.
We saw that it was probably the worst representation you could have for our town and our people, especially in a time like this.
Estes Park turns on the people who are turning on the tourists. Next. Rejecting the tourism that your town relies on? Now that it's safe? That's not how you Colorado. So Estes Park leaders at one point were asking tourists to keep their distance. They wanted Rocky closed to cut down on traffic. That was when COVID-19 cases were rising. Now Estes would love people back. Someone in town, though, disagrees. The notes have been found on cars outside of the Estes Park Visitors Center. Pretty blunt at the end, telling people that they need to go the hell back to wherever your out-of-state license is from. Yikes. Watch how Estes Park is trying to turn that nastiness into something positive.
When I first heard about the negative slips of paper being put on our visitors' cars, I was actually dumbfounded. I didn't think it was possible for a mature adult to do something like that.
If I was visiting somewhere and I got that on my car, I'm not sure that's a place that I would go back to. Probably the worst representation you could have for our town and our people, especially in a time like this, with so many businesses that have been fighting hard to do right and survive through the last 2 months. I'm McSham Walker. I'm a co-owner of Elkins Distilling Company. We're a small local craft distillery. We use all local grains. We make whiskey. We're whiskey focused. We certainly understand the fears and the concerns of the people that made the note. But at the same time, there's a whole different concern within the community of surviving in a different way, because this is the time when we get to make money. And in the off season, we really got beat down by the virus, like everyone.
You know what? Let's turn this on its side, and let's offer every visitor a discount or a gift for turning in that slip of hateful piece of paper.
So that's when we put out the note about a free drink. Was if you've had this experience while you're in our town, we'd love the opportunity to at least balance that out before you leave.
Exactly. You know, it's funny, it's happened before where some kind of a negative outbreak turns into the best PR campaign that somebody can hope for.
I haven't seen any yet, which I'm thankful for, so there's not that many out there, but we look forward to the opportunity to give a drink away.
Go to Estes, spend money. People exercising their right to protest by exercising as a form of protest. Quite Colorado. That in your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today are people exercising the right to exercise in protest. They plan to hike the Manitou Incline Saturday to protest the fact that they're not supposed to hike the Manitou Incline. It's been closed since March because of the pandemic, and the city of Manitou Springs still hasn't put out a plan for reopening. So the protesters hope their demonstration will be 2,744 steps toward a resolution. Mark writes in tonight to say thank you for recognizing the senior LGBTQ community. Mark writes, being a 63-year-old gay man that has over the years been beaten, shot at, and discriminated against, I appreciate it more than you know. Mark, this year for Pride, we see you. A lot of Next viewers are going to prove it tonight. Our Word of Thanks Microgiving Project is supporting the program for LGBTQ elders at the Center on Colfax. I ask you to join me in celebrating Pride by celebrating people who have seen decades worth of work to fight discrimination and prejudice. If you text THANKS to 303-871-1491, we'll send you the link to donate. You can find it on our social media as well. Thank you as always for your generosity. I'll see you next time.